Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sacha Baron Cohen. Hi, so good to see you, Sacha, and I am very excited to get to pick your brain here tonight about all kinds of stuff. And I think just to begin with, though, can we talk about just where you were born and raised and what your folks did for a living? Well, I think people might be curious what produces a specimen like yourself.
Well, I was brought up in northwest London, born in 1971. My dad was an accountant. His granddad was a rag and bone man, somebody who would collect bits and bobs in a Welsh mining community in Merthyr Tydfil. I had immigrated from Eastern Europe. My mother was a kind of movement teacher and amateur photographer. So that's me. Yeah.
Now, was there a funny gene in the family? Were others uh, predisposed to comedy in the way that you've been?
Yes, my dad certainly. I mean, he came from that generation where every line was a joke, and humor was incredibly important to him. So we would watch Sergeant Bilko. We would watch a lot of American comedy. He would encourage us to watch Peter Sellers and particularly listen to the Goon Show. So comedy was huge for him, and being funny was a critical part of being a person. And my mum was a great laugher, you know. So yeah, me and my brothers, that was the way we interacted. That was being the funniest person in the room was the most important thing for growing up as a teenager in the 80s.
So you're an extra hero to those of us who are fellow members of the Jewish community, and I know it was actually part of
Oh
your
no, you're going to
formation.
out me as a Jew. Great. Great. Now everyone knows I'm Jewish.
Well, I need you to clarify. I think people should know a couple other things about your contributions to our faith. What was the entertainment at your bar mitzvah?
Okay, this is the truth. I was the entertainment at my bar mitzvah. I, at the time, was a break dancer. And I used to earn my extra pocket money by doing robotics and breakdancing, for those of you who know it, in Covent Garden. In a way, I was like an early Ali G. And my brother, who's the composer for Borat and my other movies and many other people's movies, he played synthesizer on his Moog Rogue and his Korg Jupiter 107, I think it was. And that was our entertainment.
How about, I believe you got involved with a kind of a Zionist youth program that actually led in a way to acting, right?
Well, it was a kind of left-wing Jewish kind of camping organization, and um, they would have these final shows at the end of every camp, which was you do a little sketch. And so at the age of 6, that was the first time I ever did my first public comedy sketch. I loved the feeling. People were probably laughing because I was just a 6-year-old mucking around. But then I would prepare during the year for these final sketches. Everyone else would have an hour to prepare. And whenever I had a funny idea during the year, I would write it down and get ready for that performance at the end of the year.
That's amazing. Well, so people sometimes underestimate they if you're a comedian, they use words like clown and whatever. But you are obviously a very talented student to get into Cambridge, go off there, and I think that it will help people to connect the dot. This will be the first dot in a few that we're going to connect here tonight. What was your dissertation, your thesis at Cambridge about?
Okay, so I was a history student, history major, as you would say, although there's no minor when you're in English universities. And I was really interested in this concept that in the 60s, Jews were 30 times more likely than regular white Americans to be involved in the Black Civil Rights Movement. I was really proud of it as as a young Jewish, fairly left-wing kid. And there wasn't much written about it. So I went over to America, and with about £400, I managed to travel around America. I was based in Atlanta in the YMCA for a while, which at the time was kind of a homeless shelter, while I was researching at the Martin Luther King Center. And then I went around interviewing various Black civil rights leaders, and it was about this concept of the Jewish-Black alliance. One of the Jews who went down to the South to protest against systemic racism was none other than Abbie Hoffman. And actually, Abbie and his cohorts were integral to my thesis, and I don't mean to bore the non-historians out there. My thesis was basically saying that there was no such thing as the Jewish-Black alliance, because for an alliance to exist, both sides need to know that they're in an alliance with the other side. Mm-hmm. And Jews like Abbie and Schwerner and Goodman, who were part of the three who were murdered by the KKK, later became Mississippi Burning, they went down just as white left-wingers, and nobody knew that they were Jews. So my thesis said, all right, actually the African-American community were not aware that the vast majority of the white people who were in their organizations were Jews, because they were often left-wing and they were gathering in churches. So that was the conclusion, really.
I'd love to track down a copy and read that. To me, it's very interesting, and obviously
it's
interest for you.
Available.
Yeah.
I'm selling the pamphlet after this.
Yeah, please. All right, so you graduate from Cambridge with honors, and then at some point you have a conversation, I guess, with your parents that you would like to pursue comedy. How does that go?
Well, my mother's watching this, so I'm going to temper it slightly. Hello, Mum. At 2 a.m. in England. So it doesn't go down brilliantly because I didn't know anyone, and our family didn't know anyone who had earned a living by being an actor or a comedian. So it seemed foolish. And I think my parents at the time said, why don't you become a barrister? You use that theatricality in the court. You can wear a wig and appeal to the jury. And in the evenings, you can, join an amateur dramatic club. But I would say that on the other side, they were amazingly supportive. I mean, for a Jewish kid in London to pursue a career in acting and comedy seems so crazy. And they actually loved me and my brother performing. We would make up these songs every Friday night and have guests. And so they were, they almost created a kind of salon in our little suburban house in Northwest London.
Great. So can you tell me, I guess it would be about 5 years between graduating and being on TV for the first time. What happened within that period? I think there were quite a few jobs, a few ups and downs. Take it away.
Well, I was a waiter. Well, I would say a waiter. I was actually a busboy. It took me 2 years to graduate to being a waiter because my boss thought I was an imbecile. And I had one night as a security guard, front of house. I was very, very skinny at the time. I wore about 5 sweaters, but I was terrible at that. I was the host for a nightclub during the period of ecstasy when I was the only person who was not taking drugs. So I was able to manage everything. And then, a lot of unemployment and trying to get jobs. I mean, I'd left Cambridge incredibly arrogant, assuming that I would hit the West End and be the understudy to Topol while he was doing Fiddler on the Roof. And I just finished doing Fiddler in university. And obviously I get to London and I'm unemployed. And my accent isn't quite refined enough to get the roles, the sort of Shakespearean roles. At that time, everything was meant to be, RP, perfect English. And I, had a bit of a North London twang to it. So I gave myself 5 years to be able to feed myself. And and during that period, I had a cable TV show that had an audience of about 70 to 100 people, not 70,000, 70 to 100 people. That got shut down at one point after some secret sketches and movies I'd made got transmitted live. They shut down the entire channel. And then I worked for another channel, which also got shut down. And on that channel, I came up with Borat, actually. And then, tried to get a comedy special from an executive at Channel 4. And I recorded this stuff of Borat. And at the time I said, listen, I'm going to live undercover as this Kazaki reporter in a house with students. You're going to put secret cameras in and I'm going to live undercover for 3 months. This was before Big Brother. Yes. And, I go, this is this great, really interesting character. It's involving real people. It's a new type of comedy. No one's ever done it before. And they said no. And I was about to give up. And then this show called the 11 o'clock show called up and I got a job.
I think we have to hone in on the fact, though, that it really was aside from a Mr. Bean or something, there really was nothing where, and I don't even know how much of that was him dealing with real people, but this idea of you going out in the world as somebody else and kind of not bringing regular people in on the joke and just seeing how they would behave. Do you have any idea where that actually came from? What did something just woke up one day with the idea?
I would love to claim that it was part of a brilliant plan and claim that I'm far more intelligent than I am. But actually, it was accidental, like many of the best things in life. I was doing this live TV show and I went out an hour and a half beforehand in an early version of a character I did called Ali G. And I was just filming with a guy called Mike Toppin, who was a director who'd actually edited many of the great Ealing comedies. And we were just shooting some stuff that I would then cut into this live show. While I have a skateboard in my hand and I see 4 other skateboarders there. And I said to him, should I go over to them and interact with them? And he said, yeah, why not? I go over to them. I start trying to do some skateboarding. And they were like, yo, man, you was whack. You was the worst. And I'm responding in character. And then after about 5 minutes, I said, guys, I'm just pretending to be, this isn't real. They were shocked. And at that point, a tourist bus arrives. And I looked at the director. We nodded. I jumped on, commandeered the mic, started rapping, then went to a pub, started breakdancing. They called the police, then walked over towards Parliament, went into a massive corporation, claimed that my dad was upstairs, and I'm still in character. We go to this live show. My friend Mike Toppin is editing as I'm on show. I'm cutting to these bits. And we cut to the first one, it goes down great. Cut to the second one, it goes down great. Cut to the third one, nothing there. End of the show, I'm summoned to the head of the channel. And he says, quite simply, he goes, do that again and you're fired. And I realized I was onto something. I cut it into a show reel. And that became the basis of my career.
Well, with that, I would like to, you've mentioned Ali G, the streetwise poser. You've mentioned Borat Sagdiyev, the Kazakh TV personality. Also, around not much later, I believe, is when you created Bruno, the gay Austrian fashion enthusiast. And so what we're going to do now with our first clip package is take a look at the Ali G show and then how those characters were brought to an even wider audience. First, Ali G was 2003 to 2004 in the U.S. On HBO. I think that's where a lot of us maybe first discovered you. That was after it had been on in the UK before that. And then how a few years later, 2006, Borat, and then 2009, Bruno, make their way to the big screen. So we're going to take a look at all of those right now.